I'll give you $100,000 if you quit this diner.
Months later, that sentence would spread through the town faster than any local headline. But what people remembered even more was the answer. Olivia Bennett moved between tables with practiced ease, balancing 2 plates in one hand and a coffee pot in the other. At 31, she had worked at Maple Grove Diner so long that most people stopped seeing her as an employee. "Evening, Mr. Hanson," she said, topping off an elderly farmer's coffee before he could ask. "Your granddaughter win her softball game?" The old man smiled. "Hit a double. I knew she would." 2 booths away, she remembered details others forgot. Outside, a black SUV rolled slowly into the parking lot. The driver stepped out first, opening the rear door. Then a tall man emerged, adjusting the collar of a charcoal coat worth more than some monthly mortgages in town. Leon Cross at 42. He had accumulated almost everything success was supposed to buy. He pushed through the diner door. Warmth greeted him immediately. So did the smell of coffee. For a moment, he simply stood there. Nobody rushed over. Nobody recognized him. Nobody asked for a photograph. Nobody cared who he was. It felt unfamiliar. Then he noticed her. Olivia was laughing at something a customer had said. Not the polite laugh people used with wealthy men. A real one. Easy. The kind that reached her eyes. Leon frowned slightly. He had spent thousands of dollars on executive wellness retreats where people paid experts to teach happiness. Yet somehow this waitress in a small-town diner looked more content than most CEOs he knew. The thought lingered longer than it should have. Olivia approached his table carrying a menu. "Welcome to Maple Grove Diner," she said with a friendly smile. "Coffee?" Leon looked up. "Sure." She poured without asking another question. No nervousness. No attempt to impress him. As she moved toward the next table, Leon found himself watching her. Not because she was extraordinary. Because she seemed completely certain about something he had spent years searching for. And in that small diner, the billionaire who could buy almost anything realized there was something he had been missing all along. Most people assume that if someone stays in the same place long enough, it is because they are afraid to leave. Leon Cross had spent his entire adult life believing that. Success meant movement. Bigger cities. Bigger offices. Bigger opportunities. The people who stayed behind were the ones who could not keep up. At least, that was what he had always told himself. Yet 3 mornings later, he found himself pulling into the Maple Grove Diner parking lot again. Early sunlight spilled across the empty highway and painted the diner windows gold. Leon checked the time on his watch. 7:12 in the morning. He frowned. He had a conference call scheduled in 48 minutes. A private jet waiting at a regional airport 20 miles away. A calendar packed with meetings. And somehow he was sitting in the same booth. Olivia appeared carrying a coffee pot before he even opened the menu. "Good morning," she said. "You are becoming predictable." Leon looked up. "Is that a bad thing?" "Depends," she replied, filling his mug. "Do you order breakfast like a normal person yet?" He laughed. "I did not know there were rules." "There are in small towns." She nodded toward the kitchen. "Try the pancakes." Then she disappeared before he could answer. Leon found himself smiling at his coffee cup. Across the diner, people greeted Olivia by name. Not customers. Friends. A mechanic stopping in before work. A retired mail carrier. 2 teachers discussing lesson plans. Everyone seemed connected by invisible threads. And somehow Olivia sat at the center of them all. During the following weeks, Leon kept returning. Sometimes twice a week. Sometimes 3 times. He told himself it was because the diner offered a quiet place to think. But deep down he knew better. He was trying to solve a mystery. The more he learned about Olivia, the less she made sense. One afternoon, he overheard a conversation near the register. "You should have taken that management position years ago," a customer said. Olivia smiled while wiping down a counter. "Probably. Better pay. Better hours. Probably. Then why did you stay?" The customer asked it casually. Olivia simply shrugged. "Because I wanted to." She changed the subject immediately. Leon noticed something strange. Nobody pushed further, as if everyone had already accepted the answer. Later that week, he asked the diner owner himself. Frank Wilson was a broad-shouldered man in his 60s who had worked there almost as long as Olivia. "You ever wonder why she stays?" Leon asked. Frank glanced toward the kitchen where Olivia was laughing with the cook. "Every newcomer asks that." And Frank chuckled. "You tell me when you figure it out." That answer irritated Leon more than it should have. Over the next month, he discovered Olivia had turned down 2 management offers, refused a restaurant job in Kansas City, ignored opportunities that paid twice as much, maybe 3 times. Yet she never seemed bitter, never complained, never talked about escaping. One morning, Leon arrived earlier than usual and found her sitting alone in a booth before opening. An old notebook rested beside her coffee cup. The cover was worn, the edges frayed from years of use. She quickly closed it when she noticed him. For a brief second, he caught a glimpse of faded handwriting across the pages. Something about the way she touched the book made him pause. Not protective, not secretive, almost affectionate. Olivia slipped it into her bag and stood. "Coffee?" she asked. "Always." She smiled and walked away. Leon watched her disappear behind the counter. The notebook lingered in his mind long after she left, because he felt as though he had glimpsed a door into a part of Olivia's life nobody else talked about, and whatever answer he was searching for seemed to be hiding behind it. The smallest clues are often the easiest to miss. A worn photograph tucked into a wallet, a ring mark left by a coffee mug, a notebook that looks too old to matter. Leon had built an empire by noticing details other people overlooked. Yet somehow, the mystery sitting 20 feet away behind a diner counter continued to escape him. By early autumn, Maple Grove had become part of his routine. His assistant stopped asking why business trips kept bringing him through a town that barely appeared on most maps. His board members assumed he had acquired property nearby. His investors assumed there was some strategic opportunity hidden in rural Missouri. The truth sounded ridiculous even to him. He kept coming back because he wanted to understand one waitress. One Thursday afternoon, the answer seemed closer than ever. Leon arrived just before lunch. The diner was busy. Farmers filled the booths. A group of retirees occupied their usual corner table. The smell of fresh cinnamon pie drifted from the kitchen. Olivia moved through the crowd with effortless calm. Then something unusual happened. At exactly 3:55, she glanced at the clock. 4 minutes later, she untied her apron. "Leaving already?" Frank called from behind the register. "Thursday," Olivia answered simply. Frank nodded as if that explained everything. Apparently it did. Nobody asked questions. Nobody seemed surprised. Olivia disappeared into the back room and emerged carrying a canvas bag over one shoulder. For a brief moment, Leon saw the same worn notebook sticking out from the top. Then she walked out the door. Leon stared through the window. Thursday. The same day every week. The same time. The same notebook. He looked back at his untouched coffee. Common sense told him to stay where he was. Instead, 10 minutes later, he found himself driving several cars behind Olivia's aging blue sedan. The road curved through town before passing a church, a grocery store, and rows of modest homes. Leon expected her to stop at a second job, maybe a side business, maybe a class, something that would finally explain why she had turned down bigger opportunities. Instead, Olivia parked beside a small brick building on the edge of town. A simple sign stood near the entrance. Maple Grove Senior Living Center. Leon frowned. He remained inside his vehicle as Olivia stepped out carrying her canvas bag. Through the glass entrance doors, he watched a surprising transformation. The moment she entered, several residents brightened immediately. One elderly woman rose from her chair with a smile. A man using a walker waved enthusiastically from across the lobby. Olivia greeted each person by name. Not rushed. Not polite. Genuine. As though she had been looking forward to seeing them all week. Leon sat motionless. 20 minutes passed. Curiosity finally pushed him from the car. He entered quietly and followed the sound of laughter down a hallway. A recreation room stood open near the back of the building. Inside, Olivia sat at a table surrounded by half a dozen residents. The old notebook rested open in front of her. She was reading aloud. Every face in the room seemed focused entirely on her voice. Occasionally, someone interrupted with a memory. Olivia listened carefully before continuing. No cameras recorded the moment. No reporters documented it. No charity banners decorated the walls. There was no audience beyond the people present. Leon remained in the doorway unnoticed. The notebook suddenly made sense. It was not a journal. It was a collection of recipes. Handwritten notes filled the margins. Stories. Memories. Names. Olivia was reading them as though preserving something precious. For nearly an hour he watched. Then a thought arrived that unsettled him more than he expected. In his world, time was the most valuable resource imaginable. Entire companies fought over minutes. Executives measured life in quarterly reports and productivity charts. Yet here was a woman giving away hours every week without expecting anything in return. And since he had entered her life, Leon began to wonder if he had been asking the wrong question all along. For the rest of that evening, Leon could not stop thinking about the recreation room. He had attended charity galas worth millions of dollars, sat through fundraising dinners inside luxury hotels, listened to speeches about community, compassion, and service. Yet somehow a simple room filled with elderly residents had affected him more than any of them. The following Thursday, he came back. This time he did not follow Olivia secretly. He waited until his workday ended, drove directly to Maple Grove Senior Living Center, and parked across the street. He told himself he was only curious. Nothing more. Through the windows, he watched the familiar scene unfold. Olivia moved from table to table carrying homemade cookies. One resident handed her a photograph. Another wanted help writing a birthday card. A third simply wanted someone to listen. Olivia gave each person the same thing. Her attention. No rushing. No checking a phone. No glancing at a clock. Leon eventually stepped inside. The receptionist recognized him from the previous week and smiled politely. "Back again?" she asked. "Just visiting. You are not the first person Olivia has brought through those doors." Leon looked toward the recreation room. "She brings people here?" The woman laughed softly. "Not intentionally. People get curious about her." Leon found himself smiling. Curious was one word for it. He stood near the doorway while Olivia sat beside an elderly man named Walter. The old man was describing a road trip he had taken with his wife almost 50 years earlier. His memory wandered. Dates blurred together. Details repeated. Yet Olivia listened as though every sentence mattered. When Walter finished, she asked another question. Then another. Keeping the story alive. Keeping him alive in a way Leon suddenly understood. Because it was not really about the road trip. It was about being remembered. Later, as residents slowly drifted back to their rooms, Olivia finally noticed Leon standing there. Surprise crossed her face. "You are a long way from your usual booth." "I could say the same thing." She laughed. "Fair enough." For a moment neither spoke. Then Leon glanced toward the empty chairs. "You do this every week?" "Every Thursday." "For how long?" Olivia thought about it. "Almost 10 years." Leon stared at her. 10 years. Thousands of hours. Entire seasons of life given freely. Why? The question escaped before he could stop it. Olivia looked around the room. Her expression softened. "Because someone should." Leon studied her face for a moment. She had said it so simply. No performance. No expectation of praise. He realized he could not remember the last time he had met someone who did the right thing when nobody was watching. It sounded simple. Too simple. Leon frowned. "That is it. That is it." She gathered the recipe notebook from the table. "Most people think loneliness is about being alone." She ran her fingers gently across the worn cover. "It is not. It is feeling like nobody remembers you. Nobody notices if you are here or gone." Leon followed her gaze toward the hallway where Walter had disappeared. Something tightened unexpectedly inside his chest. Olivia continued quietly. "Some of these people do not have family nearby anymore. Some lost spouses. Some lost friends. Some just need someone to sit down and listen." She smiled. "It is amazing what a difference an hour can make." Leon had no answer. Because an uncomfortable realization was forming. In every company he owned, time was measured, optimized, monetized, and protected. Yet Olivia treated time differently. She spent it the way other people spent money. Generously. Without expecting a return. As they walked toward the exit, the evening sun painted long shadows across the parking lot. Olivia opened her car door and glanced back at him. "You know something funny?" "What?" "Most people assume I stay at the diner because I never found something bigger." Leon looked at her. And her smile carried a quiet certainty he had never seen inside any boardroom. Maybe they just have a different definition of big. Leon watched her drive away. He was disappointed to see the taillights disappear. Then she climbed into her car and drove away, leaving Leon alone with words he could not stop hearing. By November, Leon Cross had spent more time in Maple Grove than some of the cities where he owned office buildings. He still attended board meetings, still signed contracts, still appeared on financial news programs when necessary. But something had shifted. The endless rush that once fueled him felt quieter now, less convincing. One cold Friday morning, He sat alone in his private office overlooking downtown Kansas City. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a skyline millions of people would have envied. Yet all he could think about was a diner off a two-lane highway. His assistant entered carrying a folder. The Denver acquisition is ready for final approval. Leon glanced at the paperwork. Leave it there. She hesitated. You have been staring at that window for 10 minutes. Has it only been 10? She smiled politely and left. Leon leaned back in his chair. Olivia's words echoed through his thoughts. Maybe they just have a different definition of big. The sentence irritated him because part of him suspected she was right. A week later, he returned to Maple Grove. The diner was crowded as usual. Thanksgiving decorations hung near the register. Someone had placed a ceramic turkey beside the pie display. Olivia was carrying a tray when she noticed him. You disappeared. Business trip. That sounds important. Leon slid into his usual booth. It paid well. Olivia laughed. That sounds less important. A few minutes later, she returned with coffee. Leon watched her move through the room. Everyone greeted her. Everyone smiled when she stopped by their table. A strange thought surfaced. If Olivia vanished tomorrow, this place would feel different immediately. People would notice. Deeply, the realization stayed with him all morning. Finally, after most customers had left, he made a decision. Can I ask you something? Olivia sat across from him during a quiet moment between lunch and dinner. Depends. You always answer questions with questions. Occupational hazard. Leon smiled. Then his expression turned serious. Do you ever think about leaving? Olivia studied him carefully. Leaving what? This town. The diner. Everything. She seemed unsurprised by the question, almost as if she had expected it eventually. Sometimes. And then I make another pot of coffee. Leon shook his head. You are impossible. So I have been told. Silence settled between them. Outside, a pickup truck rolled past the diner windows. Inside, a radio played softly near the kitchen. Leon folded his hands together. What if you could do more? Olivia raised an eyebrow. More what? More good. More impact. More reach. She smiled faintly. You sound like a businessman. Maybe because I am one. What are you really asking? Leon took a breath. Since meeting her, he decided to stop hiding behind vague answers. I should probably tell you who I am. Olivia waited. Leon expected curiosity, maybe surprise. Instead, she simply listened. He explained everything. The company, the investments, the articles, the fortune, the world he came from. When he finished, Olivia took a sip of coffee. Okay. Leon blinked. Okay. You are still Leon. That is all you have to say? She shrugged. Should I ask for an autograph? He laughed despite himself. Most people reacted differently. Most people reacted a lot differently. Then an idea that had been growing inside him for weeks finally emerged. I want to make you an offer. Olivia set down her mug. That sounds dangerous. Leon smiled. $100,000. She looked genuinely surprised. The diner suddenly felt very quiet. Even the cook seemed to glance over from the kitchen. Leon leaned forward. $100,000. No strings attached. Olivia stared at him. For what? Leon's answer came easily. Too easily. Quit the diner. The silence lasted only a few seconds, but to Leon it felt much longer. Olivia stared at him across the booth. The afternoon sun filtered through the diner windows, painting golden rectangles across the floor. Somewhere in the kitchen, dishes clinked softly. Nobody seemed to move. $100,000? She finally asked. Leon nodded. Tax-free. No conditions. Olivia leaned back slightly. Except for the part where I quit my job. Yes. And then what? Leon spread his hands. Anything you want. Travel. Go back to school. Start a business. Work for a nonprofit. Take a year off. Whatever makes you happy. Olivia looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not the excited smile he expected. Not the shocked smile most people would have given. A small, almost sad smile. No, Leon blinked. No. No. The answer landed so quickly that he wondered if she had misunderstood him. Olivia, I do not think you heard the number. I heard it. $100,000. Still no. Leon stared at her. Throughout his career, people had accepted deals worth far less without hesitation. Entire companies changed direction for less money. Careers changed. Lives changed. Yet here sat a waitress refusing it as casually as someone declining dessert. Why, he asked. Olivia glanced around the diner. A young mother sat near the front window helping her son finish a grilled Cheese sandwich. Two retired farmers argued cheerfully about football near the counter. Frank was refilling sugar dispensers. The place felt alive in a way Leon could not fully explain. You really want to know? She asked. Yes. Olivia reached into her bag and pulled out the old recipe notebook. The worn cover settled gently onto the table between them. Leon had seen it countless times. This was the first time she had ever opened it in front of him. The pages were yellowed with age. Handwritten recipes filled the margins. Small notes appeared beside ingredients. Tiny memories. Tiny stories. Olivia carefully turned several pages. My mother owned this diner. Leon looked up. She had never mentioned that before. She bought it when I was 12. Olivia smiled softly. We were never rich. Not even close. But she loved this place. Her fingers rested on a recipe written in faded blue ink. Every pie in this book came from her. Leon listened quietly. When I was 21, she got sick. Olivia's voice remained calm. Not rehearsed. Not dramatic. Simply honest. For almost 2 years, people from this town helped us keep the diner open. She pointed toward the room around them. Teachers worked extra shifts. Farmers delivered produce they could not afford to give away. Retirees folded napkins. Customers paid for meals they never ate. Leon followed her gaze. Suddenly the diner looked different. Not like a business. Like a community built one small act of kindness at a time. After she passed away, Olivia continued. Everyone assumed I would sell the place and move somewhere bigger. Leon remained silent. Some days I almost did. She smiled. Then I realized something. Her eyes met his. This diner was never really about food. Leon frowned slightly. Olivia nodded toward the front door. People come here because someone remembers their name. Someone notices when they have a bad day. Someone asks where they have been if they miss a week. She paused. That matters more than most people realize. The words settled heavily between them. Leon looked around once more. This time he saw details he had overlooked for months. The familiar greetings. The easy conversations. The comfort. The belonging. Olivia closed the notebook gently. You think this place is small because you have forgotten what people are for. The sentence struck him harder than any criticism he had ever received, because he could not immediately argue with it. Some truths arrive like thunder. Others arrive quietly and refuse to leave. For Leon, Olivia's words became the second kind. He returned to Kansas City the next morning, but Maple Grove followed him everywhere. It appeared in the silence of airport lounges, in the back seat of black SUVs, in the reflections staring back from conference room windows. Most of all, it appeared during moments that used to feel important. 3 days after leaving town, Leon sat at the head of a 40-foot conference table. Executives discussed expansion plans. Charts glowed across giant screens. Market forecasts filled the room. Numbers climbed. Revenue projections increased. Investors smiled. A year earlier, the presentation would have energized him. Now he found himself staring at a single phrase scribbled in the margin of his notebook. What are people for? He had written it during the drive home from Maple Grove. Nobody noticed his distraction until the meeting ended. Everything all right? Asked Rachel, his chief operating officer. Leon glanced up. Why? You approved a $12 million project without asking a single question. That had never happened before. Leon forced a smile. Maybe I am becoming efficient. Rachel looked unconvinced. So was he. That evening he returned to his penthouse overlooking the city. The apartment occupied nearly an entire floor. Marble countertops. Custom furniture. Walls of glass framing miles of lights. For years he had considered it a reward for success. Yet as he unlocked the door, something struck him. The place felt exactly the same whether he entered it or not. No one called out a greeting. No one noticed he was late. No one cared if he skipped dinner. The silence felt heavier than usual. Leon poured a glass of water and stood by the window. Hundreds of thousands of people moved through the city below. Yet he had never felt further from them. His phone buzzed. Repeatedly. Messages from executives. Investors. Reporters. Opportunities. Requests. Problems. He silenced them all. Then he did something unusual. He called his younger sister. As he set down the phone, another realization followed. Lately, whenever something interesting happened, he found himself wanting to tell Olivia about it. They had not spoken in nearly 4 months. Leon? She answered, surprised. Everything okay? He almost laughed. That question alone felt strange. someone checking on him rather than asking for something. They talked for nearly an hour. About family, about memories, about nothing important, or perhaps everything important. When the call ended, Leon sat quietly in the dark. He realized he could not remember the last time he had spoken to someone simply because he missed them. Over the following weeks, small changes continued. He started asking employees about their families, remembering names, staying after meetings instead of rushing to the next objective. At first, people seemed confused. Then they began responding differently. One afternoon, he noticed a janitor eating lunch alone in a hallway. Olivia would have stopped, he thought. The realization came so naturally that it startled him. Normally, he would have walked past without a second thought. Instead, he stopped and sat down. 20 minutes later, he knew more about that man's life than he knew about some executives he had worked beside for years. The conversation stayed with him all day because it reminded him of something. Maple Grove, Olivia, the diner, the feeling that people mattered beyond their usefulness. One Friday evening, Leon headed back to Maple Grove. He told himself it was curiosity, maybe habit, maybe nothing at all. But as the diner's glowing sign appeared ahead, he felt a truth he had been avoiding for years. His entire life had been built on bigger numbers, bigger deals, bigger victories. Each success led to another target, another mountain to climb. Yet somewhere along the way, he had forgotten to ask why he was climbing in the first place. What was all of it for? And the fact that a waitress in a small-town diner had forced him to confront that question changed him more than any business success ever had. Over the next several months, winter arrived quietly in Maple Grove. Frost gathered along storefront windows before sunrise. Holiday lights appeared on porches throughout town. Inside the diner, the smell of cinnamon and coffee seemed stronger than ever. Olivia noticed something different about Leon almost immediately. He still visited regularly, still sat in the same booth, still asked thoughtful questions. But the restless energy that once followed him everywhere had softened. One snowy afternoon, he spent nearly 40 minutes talking with Walter from the senior center about classic cars. Another day, he helped Frank carry supplies from a delivery truck without being asked. Small things, ordinary things, yet they felt significant. Olivia watched them happen one after another. "You are changing," she said one evening while wiping down a nearby table. Leon looked up from his coffee. "That sounds dangerous." "It might be." He smiled. "Maybe I am finally getting old." "No," Olivia shook her head. "Old people know what matters." The comment stayed with him long after he left. A week later, Leon stood beside the large windows of his corporate headquarters. Across the street sat an aging brick building that his company had recently acquired. It had once housed a furniture store before standing empty for years. Most executives wanted to sell it. Some suggested converting it into office space. Others proposed luxury apartments. Leon listened politely, then rejected every proposal. "What are you planning to do with it?" Rachel asked after the meeting. Leon stared through the glass at the vacant structure. The answer felt obvious. Something useful. Construction began shortly after New Year. Leon visited frequently, studying floor plans and speaking with local contractors. There were no press releases, no media campaigns, no social media announcements celebrating his generosity. In fact, very few people knew he was involved at all. Weeks passed, then months. By early spring, rumors spread throughout Maple Grove. Nobody seemed to know exactly what was happening beside the diner. Workers arrived daily. Walls were painted. New windows appeared. Furniture was delivered. Frank became convinced someone was opening a restaurant. Several residents guessed it would be another retail shop. Olivia ignored the speculation until one Thursday afternoon when Leon arrived carrying a ring of keys. "I need to show you something." Olivia narrowed her eyes suspiciously. That sentence rarely ends well. "Trust me." 20 minutes later, they stood outside the renovated building. Fresh brickwork gleamed beneath the afternoon sun. Large windows filled the front wall with light. Leon unlocked the door and stepped aside. Olivia entered slowly, then stopped. The space felt warm immediately. Long community tables stretched across the center of the room. Comfortable chairs filled reading corners. Shelves lined one wall. A small kitchen occupied the back. Photographs of local residents decorated the halls. Everything felt welcoming, human, intentional. "What is this?" she whispered. Leon looked around. A place for people. Olivia walked farther inside. A bulletin board advertised volunteer opportunities. A meeting room stood ready for local groups. Another area contained books, puzzles, and comfortable couches. Nothing looked expensive. Everything looked useful. You built a community center. Leon nodded. Free meals twice a week. Senior programs. Reading nights. Local events. Whatever people need. Olivia stared at him. Why? Leon smiled softly. Because I finally listened. Then her eyes landed on something framed near the entrance. The familiar recipe notebook. Or rather, a photograph of its first page enlarged beneath glass. Beside it hung a sign written in elegant lettering. Margaret's table. Olivia's breath caught. Margaret. Her mother. Leon watched emotion fill her face. The weekly community dinners start next month, he said quietly. Every recipe comes from her notebook. For several seconds Olivia could not speak, because at that moment she understood something important. Leon had not tried to rescue her from the life she loved. He had finally learned why she loved it. The grand opening happened on a warm Saturday evening in late spring. By 6 o'clock, the parking lot beside the diner was already full. Pickup trucks lined the street. Families arrived carrying casseroles and homemade desserts. Elderly residents from Maple Grove Senior Living Center walked through the front doors with smiles that seemed years younger than their age. The building that had once stood empty now glowed with life. Laughter drifted through open windows. Conversations overlapped. Coffee brewed in large silver urns near the kitchen. Leon stood in the middle of something he had helped create and felt no urge to calculate its value. There were no quarterly projections attached to this night. No investors waiting for results. No performance metrics. Only people. Real people. Olivia moved through the crowd greeting guests. She stopped to hug Walter from the senior center. She introduced local teachers to retirees. She helped carry trays of food into the kitchen. Watching her felt strangely familiar. This was what she had always done. Connect people. Quietly. Consistently. Leon finally understood that the diner had never been the source of that gift. Olivia was. Near the entrance, a line had formed beneath the framed photograph of Margaret's recipe notebook. People paused to read the handwritten notes preserved beneath glass. Some smiled. Others wiped away tears. Many remembered Olivia's mother personally. Every week afterward, those recipes would become community dinners. But tonight, they were something more. Proof that a single life could continue touching people long after it was gone. As sunset painted the sky shades of gold and orange, Frank tapped a spoon against a coffee mug. The room gradually grew quiet. I know everybody is here for the food, he announced, drawing laughter from the crowd. But before we eat, I think somebody deserves a thank you. He nodded toward Leon. Applause filled the room. Leon immediately looked uncomfortable. Olivia noticed and smiled. Some things had not changed. Leon stepped forward reluctantly. I am not very good at speeches, he admitted. My employees would tell you that is not true. Someone called from the crowd. More laughter followed. Leon shook his head. A year ago, I would have stood here talking about investment, growth, and opportunity. He paused. Now I think those words are incomplete. The room became still. I spent most of my life believing success meant building bigger things. His eyes found Olivia across the room. Then someone taught me that what matters is building places where people matter. Silence followed. Not awkward silence. The kind that appears when something true has been said. After dinner, the crowd slowly drifted outside beneath strings of lights hanging between the buildings. Children played tag across the grass. Neighbors lingered in folding chairs. The evening felt less like an event and more like a family gathering. Leon stood near the edge of the property, watching everything unfold. Olivia joined him carrying 2 cups of coffee. You look happy, she said. Leon accepted the cup. I think I am. That is new. Very. For a moment, they watched the lights glow against the darkening sky. Then Leon turned toward her. Do you know why I kept coming back to the diner? Olivia smiled. Because the coffee was good? He laughed softly. No, she waited. Leon looked around at the people gathered together. The friendships. The conversations. The sense of belonging he had spent years searching for in all the wrong places. Finally, he looked back at her. Because you showed me something worth more than $100,000. Olivia tilted her head. What is that? Leon smiled. The answer came easier than any business decision he had ever made. He had come to Maple Grove looking for answers. Somewhere along the way, he realized he had been looking for her too. You showed me where life actually happens. Neither of them spoke after that. They did not need to. The lights glowed overhead. Voices drifted through the warm evening air. Somewhere inside the community center, a page from Margaret's recipe book turned beneath careful hands. And for the first time in a very long time, Leon Cross felt rich in a way money had never managed to make him feel.